Welcome back. This week we're going to do Kelly Gallup's Wooly Sculpin. A couple of months back I did the Conehead Wooly Sculpin. My preference between the two is the unweighted one. I think it gives more of the Sculpin profile with the way the deer hair is trimmed and everything. When you get the Conehead on there, it kind of gets away from that a little bit. But the Conehead is good for, you know, more of a jigging action. You can still retrieve it fast. It's not like it's weighted that awful much. But I like the profile on this one a lot better. And if I'm fishing a single hooked fly, it's a toss-up between the Wooly Sculpin and the Cougar. I still think I like the Cougar better. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I go back and forth on them all the time. But we're going to go ahead and get into this. I want to make sure that I have... Yeah, that'll work. I think I got everything that I need here. I'm going to speak through some of the materials and everything as always. But to start off on this one, underneath here somewhere, I have the hook that we're going to use. I have a bunch of different options here for what we're going to use on our Hackle, and I'll speak to those once we get closer to that point. But the hook on this one, like I was saying, this is an MFC 7008. This is a size 4, and this is just a 4X long streamer hook. Really solid hooks. It's got a good gauge size to the wire and everything. Just a very versatile overall hook. And I like doing these on the 4X long more so than the 3X. I'm not sure why. I kind of gravitate toward the 4X over the 3. But we're just going to go ahead and get a good thread base down here, and then I'm going to stop my thread probably at the quarter way. This right here, this section is going to be all deer hair from here up, and I'm actually going to back that off a turn or two. On the 4X long, the 4X hooks you can get away with lengthening out the head a little bit. Maybe that's why I like them a little bit more. You get a little bit more profile on that. So we're going to lengthen that out. And like I said, I'm going to stop my thread right there. So that's where I'm going to start my collar and then spinning the deer hair up forward for the head and everything. I'm going to move my thread to the back now. And I have some olive brown Marabou here that I sorted through, a good ways back during the production tying thing. And these are already sorted. And what I'm going to do is just take some of these tails here. That one's kind of a mess. There we go. I'm going to measure this out to be about the length of my hook. Work with me here. Stuff doesn't want to cooperate. We'll get that. Wet that a little bit and we'll be good. So now I'm just going to take this back, and my thread's going to lay right where the barb of the hook is, and I'm going to move this forward for some bulk on the body. Next on this, I'm going to take some copper Flashabou, and this is the holographic. It's not a straight copper, so it has kind of some shine and everything to it. There's kind of some there is some different colors, and I think it gives a little bit more of a reflection. And I'll back out here in a second once I get this tied in and give you a look at the difference between the two. Get on there. There we go. So now I'm just going to take this is just 2 strands of Flashabou. I doubled it over, so I'm going to have 4 on my side, 4 on the camera side. And I'm going to have this just as some internal flash, and I'm going to cut it just short of the overall length of my tail. And then I'm going to find a second piece here that I really like, and there's none of them on the table, so I'm going to find the second piece of Marabou. This one looks pretty good. Get that one wet. That way it cooperates for us a little bit. And then we're going to make this the same length, maybe slightly longer than the first plume of Marabou that we tied in for the tail. Now same thing, I'm just going to take this and move it, or I'm just going to wrap this, open loop it up to where I'm going to tie in the head. And you can see as those fibers are starting to dry out on the tail, it's starting to really fluff out and everything, and it's going to cover up some of that Flashabou that we have, and then when this is in the water it's going to have a nice lateral line coming back the tail. And what I was talking about, let me zoom out just a little bit here. That'll work. So let me see if I have just some straight copper here all the way in the back. There's the straight copper. Let's set those off to the side and get those once I'm done filming. But now we'll go ahead and zoom in on this. That way you can see the difference between the holographic and the straight copper. Like I was saying, you can see that on this one here, there's just, it's like it's segmented almost, and there's a little bit of a breakup between the copper and some of the other colors. It looks like there's maybe like some black or some almost olive look to it, and then this one here is just a straight copper. There's a little bit more of a reflective property just because it's one solid color, but this one, I think when the light hits it and when it's in the water, it gets a little bit more shine. So I tend to go with that holographic, and that's on just about every color these days. I tend to go with the holographic. So enough of that. Let me get this Marabou out of the way here so I have some room to work. Get out of there. Alright, next up on this one is I'm going to tie in a rib. This is a dual purpose. If you've watched any of the other videos that use Hackle or Sculpin or anything like that, this rib, like I said, is a dual purpose. It works, one, to give a little breakup on the body, and also this is what's going to capture the hackle when we wrap it. This is going to be a counter wrap. So we'll go ahead and get that tied in, and then for the body on this one, I'm going to do a dubbing loop, and I'm going to use ice dub. When Kelly originally did this one, I want to say he used just a plain chenille, just like an olive chenille, and you can, by all means, you can do that. You can use just a straight olive chenille, whatever it is that you want to use. This ice dub kind of changed things a lot. I really like the way this ice dub looks. Like I said before, with the Flashabou and everything, there's a little bit of a reflective property to this, so it's going to give that look that a sculpin or a bait fish, anything really has. You'll notice, like when you see stuff, when you see a fish feeding in the water and everything, especially when it's bright out and the sun's reflecting down through it, and you see a fish roll to its side, you're going to catch a flash anytime it's turned to the side. And I really think that that's a trigger point for the predatory fish. So what I'm doing with this one is I'm going to mix a little bit of pearl ice dub and olive brown. There's the pearl, there's the olive. I'm probably going to go 2 parts olive brown, 1 part pearl. And if you look at the underside of the sculpin, it's got a pearl belly. I just kind of like having that little bit of extra shine in this. If you don't, by all means, you can just go straight olive brown on this one if you don't want to mess around with the mixing of the colors and everything. I just like the way this looks for some reason. It just kind of fits really. So we're going to get that in our dubbing loop and work this all the way up to the front here, right where we're going to start our deer hair head. You can see there's a nice little taper on this. I don't get too carried away on the taper. I like to have a little bit of one, but like I said, I don't get too carried away on it, mainly because we're going to have all of the Sculpin and the Hackle, or whatever you decide to use. It's going to make that natural taper by the way that we tie it in, starting back here with the longer fibers and then going through. That's going to kind of aid in the taper a little bit. So I'm going to zoom out again and explain some of the different options that you have for these hackles, or for the hackle on this pattern. This right here is just straight Sculpin. Usually 5 to 7 inches long is what you're going to get. On a pattern this big, with the hook as big as it is, you can by all means use this. It's probably one of the best ones to use for this. Some of the fibers can get really long and it just looks obscene almost because they are so big. So be careful if you do use the Sculpin to pick through and measure it out, make sure that it's not going to be too awful big. Next up, you can use just a neck if you want. This is a Grizzly dyed olive neck. You can pick your big fibers up here and use that. I don't like using the necks too much. The barbs are a little too stiff for my liking, and it just kind of, I don't know, you don't quite get the movement and the pliability out of the feather that you do with the Sculpin or anything else. Next up, if I'm using a smaller hook on this, which I do scale them down sometimes, I'll tie like 1.5 or 2 long inch fly on these single ones. These hen saddles are great. These are from Whiting. It's just like Sculpin, but it's a more compact fiber. It's probably only, you know, if we're going to pick out of these top pieces right here, that's what I normally use with the smaller hooks, but it lays out perfect. These hen saddles, they're cheap. They make great hackle sections on these flies. But like I was saying, this hook's a little bit longer, so we're going to stay away from that one. What I'm going to use on this is the barred saddle. This is an olive and black. This is from MFC. It's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of saddle. It's kind of Sculpin. Some of the pieces look more Sculpin-like. Other ones are more of a rooster saddle. So we're going to go ahead and pick a piece out of here that we really like and get that tied in. Get out of there. Get out of there. And I'm just going to go and find one of these that I really like. This one looks like it's going to be pretty good. Another thing with this MFC, you'll see that the stem is pliable almost to the after shaft. I mean, if you want to, you can get that, you know, 2-3 wraps of after shaft in there. That's the real webby fibers right here. But I'm just going to try and get about 1 to 2 wraps of the real webby fibers in there, and then the rest of it's just going to fill out to the back. So I'm going to get my wire out of the way. Go ahead and get that tied in, and then go ahead and capture that, and I'm just going to wrap that up to the front, and we'll do a half hitch here just to keep our thread in place. Now, I think that's long enough. I shouldn't have to use a hackle plier or anything. And then all I'm going to do, you can see where I have those nice webby fibers. Stay with me. One more. I got those nice webby fibers up front, and that kind of gives a little bit of bulk right there, and then it thins out as I come to the back. That helps with the taper a little bit. It helps with the overall profile that I'm after on this pattern. Oh, I trapped one there. Not a big deal. Now we'll go ahead and tie this off. We'll tie off our wire, and you can see we still have this section right here that's going to be all head. This is going to be all deer hair, and this is going to form one of the more crucial parts of this fly is going to be the deer hair. Get that set there. Alright, let's see our hackles. A little bit off. There we go. That looks better. We got the hackle sitting in there. We have the section clear that we're going to use for the head. And then the next thing that we're going to do, find a hair stacker here. I got stuff all over the place, confusing myself a little bit. We're going to grab the stacker, and then we're going to go with, this is just olive brown, or what does it say, Sculpin olive, spinning deer hair. This is from Nature's Spirit. This stuff's pretty good here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the deer hair on this. I've done it on plenty of videos, and Kelly's done videos specifically for deer hair that goes into a lot more detail than I would be able to. So we'll omit that and just go into forming this deer hair head and collar. So this is the section that I'm going to use for the collar here, and you can see this is a pretty obscene amount for a collar. It's covering up, I mean, it's wider than the tail. There's just a pile of deer hair right here, and it's by design. You want this collar to be nice and full. You want this to fill up, because the collar, we'll clean this out here real quick. The collar actually, like I was saying, one of the key and important parts. The collar helps keep this fly riding true in the water, and you'll see what I mean when we get this thing together. But having that nice half moon collar, let me flip this around, give you a better look here. So we're going to have a collar that's going to be a half moon. It's going to be right here on the hook, and it's not going to extend below it, and it's going to stabilize your fly, and it's going to keep it from tipping to one side to the other. So, long story short, make a nice thick collar on this. So I'm just going to go ahead and stack this, get these fibers all nice, and get the deer hair tips nice and lined up. And there you can see our tips are nice and clean. Everything's good there. Just swing this around and we'll grab the tips with our left hand. Get rid of the stacker, get that out of the way. Transfer it over to the right, and then we're going to measure this out. You can see that's a bulky collar right there. I'm going to measure this out, and I want these tips coming back to the point of the hook. If anything, maybe a little bit past that point. And then I'm going to transfer these back with the tips in my left hand. I have that measurement. I'm just going to square this off, and then this is all it's going to be tied in. We're just making the collar right now. We're not doing anything with the actual head. Typically I'll switch over to gel spun 200 on this, but I'm going to try and get away with doing it just on the 100. So you can see we've got that section tied in, a couple of good solid wraps, and then we're just going to press this with our thumb just to move this around, get that nice half moon effect that we're after. And then I'm going to advance right in front of that little bump, and then I'll spin this around. You can see that nice half moon that we're after right there. We still have the underside of the body coming through, that collar's not interfering with the body whatsoever. Now when this gets wet, that little bit of pearl that we put in with that olive brown is going to show up, and it's going to be kind of a mottled olive slash pearl. And I really like the look that it gives when it's wet and when you're fishing it. Next thing up on this is we're going to take another stack, probably about the same amount, maybe a little bit less on the deer hair, and we're just going to spin a piece right in front of that collar. This is what's going to start to form the head of this fly. Same thing, I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to run this through my comb. I know you can't see it because it's out of the frame right now, but we're going to go ahead and clean this up. That's all the more junk I got out of that. This is really good deer hair right here. Now, kind of even those back sections out a little bit. And then I'm going to take the tips on this, because you don't want to use the tips or anything. Those aren't hollow like the center section of this is. They're not going to spin, they're going to get in the way. I just go ahead and clip those off. And then same thing, put these and loosen my grip up a little bit on it and just try and even up the butt section of this. Clean out some of them smaller pieces, and I'm going to lay this to where I'm going to grab that center section on this stack, and I want one nice loose wrap, a second loose. See my thread's starting to disappear, and then I'm going to do a third. And what I'm going to do is just help this stuff start to move by spinning it here. And you'll see it start to make that rotation. And we're getting a nice spin of deer hair to form this section of the head. I'm going to peel all of this stuff back. I'm not packing this like you would see some of the guys that do, well if you're doing like a D&D or a SID, some of the bass bug guys, I'm not packing this thing to where it's going to be so tight. You want this stuff to shed water, and you want water to be able to get in between the fibers. So this isn't going to be a real compact head. You want just enough on there to where it's going to make a good shape, but it's still going to allow water to pass through it, and it's going to shed water on your back cast. The only thing we're really after here is the overall shape of this fly, or of the head. Same thing, I'm grabbing another stack here. This one's a little bit less than the one that I just tied in. And then I'm going right in front of this, try and keep as many of these fibers from the first spin out of your way, and that way it's not going to create a goofy bump or anything in there. And then same thing, I'm just going to spin this around. Be careful how tight you pull if you're using GSP 100, because it will cut right through that deer hair. Now you see we have this nice clean head. Everything, I got all the fibers out of the way. And we're just going to go ahead and whip finish this. And then get rid of our thread. There you go. You can see we just have a big ball of deer hair sitting on this hook right now, but we're going to make some sense of it in a little bit. Next up, before you start to trim this, or before you start to shape this head at all, let me see if I can find it. I've got just an old comb it's been through hell, but it's still getting the job done. All I want to do is just fluff this stuff out, get any of these trapped hairs that may be in the way or going to cause some irregularities in the overall shape of the head. Go ahead and clean that out, and then we're just going to go with the double-edged razor blade. And go with a good fresh one on this, that way I get some good cuts. And hopefully I don't have anything to blame on a bad looking trim. So with this, I'm going to start on the bottom. So my vise is inverted right now, and starting on the bottom, if you look at a sculpin, it's got that kind of a wedge shape to the head, and the bottom is very flat. So we want to just imitate that, and we're just going to draw our razor blade right through this, right on the bottom. Get a nice clean cut through there, and that's the first cut. You can see that's nice and flat. There's not a whole lot of stuff that I took off of that at this point, and I'm going to leave it right as it is. I'm going to come back and make finer cuts as we go through this, but I want to just shape this top section now. So I'm just, however much of a wedge you want, so to speak, you can adjust that by how you flex this razor blade. I'm going to keep it probably about like this. Sometimes I'll go a little bit tighter, but I'm going to make this head a little bit more broad. And then I'm just going to start right here and push this right through. Taking your time, don't try and get the first cut absolutely perfect. You're going to wind up shaping this a little bit more, and if you're like me, you're going to get really obsessive about the shape of this head here. So you can see that I have the collar here. There's still some fibers from the original spin. I'm just going to take this through again. I'm going to follow the same track, and I'm going to push this a little bit further into the collar. There we go. Now, we got the majority of our fibers out of there. If you really want to get picky, you can go ahead, and I've explained this in a couple of videos before, you can go ahead, like see there's those couple fibers that you probably can't see too well. I don't want to mess that collar up. I still want that to be nice and thick, so what I do is I just put my thumbnail right behind it, and I just advance that razor blade right back to my thumbnail, and then it cleans that collar up really nice. I'm going to do the same thing only with my finger here. Now, this is just the first rough cut overall. There's still a lot more trimming to do on this. I'm going to go back to the bottom and really start cleaning this up now. But now that I have my shape that you can see that I want on the bottom, I'm going to really start cleaning this up, and I'm going to make some finer cuts. Just going to brush this razor blade right through there, and you'll see that your hackle and your body starts coming into sight now. That was definitely a hook in my finger. Just cleaning this up, getting everything. There you can see I'm a little heavier on my side than I am the camera side, but that's alright. We'll get that squared away in a little bit. So now all I want to do is just take this and clean this section up. Same thing on this side. And you can spend a pile of time trimming these things out. You really can. I'm going to try not to spend too much time doing this. I just want to cut this overall bulk of the head down slightly. So I'm just going to fine tune this a little bit. Absolutely not necessary. It would have fished just fine the way I first trimmed it, but I want to cut this down just a little bit. That way it looks a little cleaner for the camera. Yeah, I guess that looks alright there. I guess it looks alright. I'm going to take out some of these fibers on the side here that are just in the way. Then I want to clean up this bottom just a little bit more. I'm getting a little too picky, but that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody if you've watched any of these videos in the past. Yep, can't let that go either. Alright, I think I'm going to call that good. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and grab the overall shape of this, and it's best to take this out of the vise and trim across the grain, so to speak. And all I'm doing on this portion right here is I'm just making this thing symmetrical on both sides. I'm probably going to mess this up. Because I'm going to trim too much. I'm going to leave that be, because if I trim much more of that, I'm going to wind up with no head, and that just won't be, that'll ruin a good fly. So I'm going to leave this thing as it is. We're going to just cut this one right here and not mess this fly up. Hopefully. I'll probably still trim after I shut the camera off a little bit. But there you go, you got the overall gist of it. And one more thing that I wanted to show is that this underside, you can still see that little bit of pearl coming through there. I can see some stuff I got to trim there, it's a little off center. But for the most part, we're in the ballpark. We're just fine-tuning it at this point. But there's that nice underbody with the ice dub that we were talking about that's going to really shine through, and it's really going to pop when this fly gets wet, and then the hackle starts going back, and it's going to give that nice mottled effect to it. But for all intents and purposes, we're done with the video. Once again, this was Kelly Gallup's Wooly Sculpin. If you have any questions or comments on this one, as always, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next fly.